Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem. Today's daf is YOMA Samach Vav. We begin partway down the Amud, actually 6 lines from the top of the Amud. The Gemara tells us yesterday that if we have an extra korban from last year Yom Kippur, we have a par Kohen Gadol, a Soyer Hashem, which was unneeded. Come next year, you cannot use that par v'soyer. Actually, the Gemara says you want to apply misa to this animal. You're not meant to have it sit around until next year comes around. And the shaila is, why? What's wrong with just using last year's korban? Come next year, Yom Kippur, you have a par, you have a soyer from last year. The Gemara sought to explain this halacha. We had several suggestions which the Gemara negated, and finally we have Rabba's pshat. Says the Gemara 6 lines from the top of the Amud, the last word of that line. Ella ma Rava, you know why? You're not meant to leave it over till next year. Gzeiro mishum takala, concerned about unauthorized use. It might bring about a takala. You might misuse the korban throughout the year. The Gemara soon will explain exactly what the concern is. And in fact, we find that this concern is valid. The sanya ein magdishin. Nowadays, there's no Beis HaMikdash. You're not meant to make hegdish. Vein marichen. Not meant to commit to pay a person's value to the Beis HaMikdash. Vein machrimen. This is another form of hegdish expression. You're not meant to make a cherem to bedek habayis. Bizman hazeh, when we have no way of implementing this hegdish. There's no way to bring the hegdish to. You're not meant to engage in this type of activity. Vein hegdish. But if you did do hegdish, veherich, vehechrim, what do you do with the item that he committed to hegdish? Behemot yakim. If it's a behemot, you destroyed. Peiros, ksus, v'kelim peiros, or garments, or utensils, yirakfu. You let them rot. Ma'ois uklei matches. If you have coins or metal utensils, yoylech hanol yamamelch, you take it into the yamamelach, onto another salty body of water, which will ensure that nobody will have unauthorized hana'ah from this hegdish. Ve'ei zehu ikur. What exactly does ikur? What does that mean? Noyel delis lafaneh. This is the animal. You take it, put it into a room, and you lock up the door. You don't feed it and you let it die. So we see there's a takala of using hegdish property, and therefore you're not meant to go ahead and be magdish, machrim, ma'arich bezmanaseh. Likewise, in our case, if you're going to allow the spillover korban to be used next year, perhaps throughout the year, takala will come about. Says the Gemara, takala demai, what exactly do you mean takala? Takala da akrava, that perhaps he's going to divert this korban and be makrivit for another purpose, for personal use. He'll take the sir and decide, oh, this is a good animal for my personal chatas. If that's the chashash, afilu kol re'iyos nami, then why don't you have this concern whenever there's a din of roya? We have many examples of karbanos which are no longer useful. We let it roam, pasture till it gets a mum, have it sold, and take the money and direct it to the Nedava fund in the Beis HaMikdash. We never seem to be concerned that perhaps somebody in the interim will take that animal and use it for his personal korban. So why would this case be different? Whether it's a concern of perhaps using it, sharing its wool, working with it, while it's awaiting hakrava for next year, well, then again, afilu kol re'iyos nami. Why wouldn't you have this concern by other cases where you say roya achi yistoev? Why is this par v'sar any different than anything else? Says the Gemara, lo'ilam takala da akrava. Let's go back to the first concern. The chashash is that perhaps while this soyer is awaiting hakrava next year, he's going to take this animal and use it for a different korban. Bring it as his own personal chatas. Well, your shaila was, why don't you have this concern whenever you say roya achi istar? The big difference. All the other cases where those korbanos are no longer awaiting hakrava, they're nifsal from hakrava for whatever reason, and they're awaiting a mum, after which they'll be sold, then his mind isn't really focused on that animal. He was Masiach Das from that animal. He's not preoccupied with it. He's not expecting to bring it as a carbon. In which case, there's no chashash that will take it and bring it as a carbon. Hach the basakravi, as opposed to this parasoyer, which is certainly still roy for carbon. In fact, he's waiting to bring it next year. Taradba. His mind is still on it. He's still thinking about being makar of it. And you know what might happen throughout the year? If he'll need a carbon, he's sure an animal will say, well, that one is actually a carbon. I'll use it. Let me go ahead and use it for the Mizbeach. And therefore we say, they go to Misa, we don't want to have them around throughout the year. Let's go over to Rashi, which is 10 lines from the top of the Am. Mishum Takala. L'kamam nefarish my Takala. The Gemara soon will tell us what exactly is the Takala. The Snan, the Chashin of the Takala, we find Takala is a valid Chashash. Ein Magdishin Shum Davar. Shestam Hegdish Lebeda Kabayis ve'ein len Takala. There's no point in being Magdish. There's nothing to do with it. Ve'machrimen kasavar stam charamen lebeda Kabayis. Uplukti mechpsechas erchen. Acherim is another version of Beda Kabayis. Doesn't go to the Kohanim. That's the Shita of this Brisa. And the Gemara had a kasha. Fine, you're afraid about Takala by the Parvisur, which are left over from last year. If that's the case, Kol Rois, Kol Hanida Amar Rabbanan, Yiru, Achistavu, Nechush Shami Akriva. Why is this different than any other halacha of Roy Achistav? Perhaps in the meantime, he might use it as a carbon. Gemara says the difference. Generally, a behemah which was stamped with the destiny of Roya Achistav is no longer Roya Fakrav. It's meant to be sold off, and its value directed to the Ndava. He's no longer thinking about the hakrava potential of that animal. In which case, he's diverted his mind from it, wise, and he's not going to use it as a carbon. As opposed to this one, the Bas Hakrava, the Yom Kippurim Haba, it's awaiting Hakrava next year. Taradbu liboy ala kravasei. He's still thinking in terms of Hakrava, v'dilma makravla mikam Yom Kippurim, which might lead him to erroneously bring that animal as a different type of carbon before next Yom Kippur arrives. So that's the final pshat in this halacha. We don't want to leave the Pyrus Sir over for next year, because in the meantime he might use it for another purpose, for another carbon. Continues the Gemara. Actually, v'takala atzma tanoi. We want to know, this concept is totally in a machlekes tanoim, whether or not we're concerned about this type of takala, of him misusing the carbon for another purpose. We have one brisa, Pesach shelo yikarev b'rishon, yikarev b'sheni. Suppose he had an extra carbon Pesach. One went missing. He brought a substitute. He found the first one. It's after Yom Tov. He doesn't need it. Yikarev b'sheni, have it sold off to somebody who needs a Pesach Sheni, a Tamei, one who was a B'derech Ruchaika. B'sheni, suppose it's left over from Pesach Sheni, Yikarev l'shana haba, bring it next year. There's no problem leaving it around. V'tanya idach, we have another brisa, lo yikarev, don't go ahead and leave it over for next year. What's the pshat in the machlekes? My love b'takala pligi. Perhaps the machlekes is based on this shaila. One Tana says, don't leave it around till next year. It might come to takala. He might misuse the animal. The other Tana says, no concern. So this whole discussion that we had is not so simple. Is it? Is it machlekes tanoim? Says more, not necessarily. Loy, the kuli alma, loy chashin al takala. That's one gersa, or the other gersa says, yeh chashin al takala. In any case, let's assume that both prices hold the same shita. They hold una choshesh for takal. V'hacha beplukta the Rebbe v'Rabbanu kamiflaki. The question is whether we paskin like Rebbe who we learned yesterday holds that when the Torah speaks about a behemah being brought as a carbon within its first year, we're speaking about a solar year, a 365-day year. That's Shitas Rebbe. So one brisa holds, it's possible to use last year's carbon Pesach for this year's Korban, for this year's Pesach, it could technically be within the year. For instance, if it was Magdashit last Erev Pesach, when it was only 8 days old, which is the minimum age requirement for Hegdish. Come next year, Pesach, which is only 354 days away, it's still within the solar year, and it's still right for a Korban. That's one Shita. And the other Shita is Rabbanan. The other Shita holds like the Rabbanan that the Shana, which we use to reckon the birthday of the animal for Korban purposes, is the Shana that Yisrael Amoinin, 12 months, lunar months. In which case, last year's Korban Pesach is no longer useful. And that's all the Brisa meant to say. It's past time. It's overage. And the answer is Ha Rebbe v'Rabbanan. One Brisa which allows is Rebbe. The other Brisa which doesn't allow is Rabbanan. But perhaps when it comes to the question of Takala, there's no Shaila. Maybe nobody holds of Takala. The Rabbanan simply are referencing a practical, technical problem here. It's past age. That's why it cannot be brought next year. Says Rabbi, you cannot say that because we have a Brisa of Atanya v'chein hamois. The same discussion that applies to the leftover behema of Korban Pesach applies to its money. One Brisa says you can use it next year. Other Brisa says you cannot. When it comes to money, there's no expiry date, so you can't say that is the basis of discussion. It's pretty evident that the discussion here is revolving around the Shaila of Takala. One Brisa holds the extra Korban Pesach or funds are not meant to be left over till next year because it might generate Takala. It might bring about unauthorized use. He might use it for a different type of Korban. Whereas the other Shita says, no concern, leave it over and use it next year. So in summation, we had a din, we had a leftover par, besur, can be used next year. Gemara says no, it goes lemisa, and the question was why. And Rava's final pshat was, this Tana holds that when we have an animal which is designated for Korban use, it's awaiting hakrava. He's mindful of it. He's not masich das from it. He knows full well this thing is a potential Korban. Come mid-year, he might confuse things and says, "Well, I need a Korban. This is a good Korban. It is a potential Korban after all. Let me go and use it for something else, for a different Korban, which of course is also." And that will be the reason not to have it around till next year. And in fact, the Gemara concludes that we have machlekes tanoim whether or not this would be a concern. Continues the mission. Now we have the Kohen Gadol approaching the next step in the avodah. He approaches the Soyer HaMishtaleach, which we call the Soyer LaAzazel. He leans both hands on the Soyer's head and expresses the Vidui on behalf of Klal Yisrael. V'kacha ya'omer, Ona Hashem, please, in the name of Hashem, Shem of Rachamim, which will be Moichel Klal Yisrael. And he says, Chatu, this is a lashon of Shoigig, Avu, this is referring to Mezid, Pashu, referring to Merida, rebellious acts. Chatu, Avu, Pashu, Fanecha, Amcha, Beis Yisrael. So he's representing Klal Yisrael. Generally, you don't do vidui for somebody else, but the Kohen Gadol is held accountable, so to speak, for Klal Yisrael. He's a leader at this point, and it's all within the domain of his responsibility, his achrayus. So he does the vidui for Klal Yisrael. Chatu avu pashel fanecha amcha Beis Yisrael ana b'Hashem kaperna l'chatoim v'la'avoinu yisrael l'avshayim shechatu v'sha'avu v'sha'pashel fanecha amcha Beis Yisrael, as it says in the Torah, k'kasav b'soyros meishavdecha k'vayim hazeh yichaper aleichem. Hashem on this day will be mechaper for you l'tayr eschem, to cleanse you mikol chateisechem l'fnei Hashem titoru. You'll be cleansed before Hashem. So it turns out that he said the Shem HaMeforish, that special long name of Hashem, 3 times throughout this vidui. Right? Once on Hashem, once again on Hashem or on Hashem, depending on the Gersa, and then L'fnei Hashem Titoru. In fact, we had learned the beginning of Perek Taref Kalfi that there were 10 times throughout the day when the Kohen Gadol would express the Shem HaMefurash. It was 3 times for every vidui, right? Once on the first video of the par, then again at the second video of the par, and then he had another vidui on the Sam Shtaleach, and each one had 3 mentionings of Hashem, and then the final one was the Lashem Chatas, when he does the Kalfi, the Gerolas. In any case, the Kehanim who were listening, the Kehanim Ve'am, and the rest of the nation Ha'indim Azara, who were standing nearby in the Azara, Shem HaMefurash, when they would hear this special Shem HaMefurash, Shu Yitzim Pi Kohen Gadol, uttered by the Kohen Gadol, some of Farshim say, would actually just express itself. He wouldn't have to say it, was just Yoitzi, it would just come out of his mouth. So what would they do? They would kneel, they would bow their heads all the way down to the floor. This was their way of acknowledging the mentioning of Hashem's name, expressing their gratitude and having the privilege of taking part in Hashem's malchus. We learn this from our pasuk. We have the pasuk that Moshe Rabbeinu tells Klal Yisrael, "Ki Shem Hashem Ekro." When I mention the name of Hashem to you, you respond in kind. There's a shayla whether it happened 3 times over, every time they heard Hashem's name throughout the vidui. Would they do this, or as the Sfasema says, perhaps the first 2 times he did it quietly during the vidui. It was only the third, Lifnei Hashem Titaru, which was expressed loudly, and they heard that, after which they responded by bowing and saying Baruch Shem. What happens next? It says the Mishnah, Mesoroi L'misha Haya Melichai. He would hand the Sar Mishtalech over to this fellow who would accompany the goat out to the midbar, out to the suk, to the cliff, where he would toss it over the cliff. Truth is, anybody is eligible to be moilech soyer. Doesn't have to be a kohen. This is not really an avodah that requires a kohen. Ella, however, facts would generally turn out differently. Also, Kehanim Gedolim Kva. The Kehanim Gedolim who were in charge, they established a set practice. They wouldn't allow a Yisrael, just a plain simple Yisrael, to do this job. It was reserved for Kehanim. Rabbi Yossi, true, generally speaking, the Kehanim would do this, but as you say, the Yisrael is still kosher. In fact, I recall one incident where Yisrael did it. This fellow Arsala was the one who transported the Soyer Lazazel. In fact, he was a Yisrael. So we see that technically Yisrael is kosher. Concludes the Mishnah. V'kevesh osuloi, they erected a ramp for the fellow carrying the Soyer Lazazel, so that he can get out safely, all the way from the Azara out of the city. V'pnei habavliim, the concern about these Babylonians. She'metalshim b'sa'arei, these violent fellows, they would grab onto his hair. Some say we're speaking about the hair of the goat, and some say we're speaking about the hair of the poor fellow transporting the animal. And they would urge him on, toil, grab it, v'tzei, and go, and leave. Toil, v'tzei, hurry up. Why are you lingering around? You have a virus that must be taken care of. Get going. So this ramp, sort of a buffer, create a buffer between himself and the people around him, so he can get out safely. Let's go over to Rashi. It was around 2/3 down the Amud. It says Rashi, Baloi Eitel So'ir. Hashta Hadar Tana Lamilsi. Now the Mishnah reverts back to the schedule Laruye to teach us Beseder HaAvodah, back to the schedule of the Avodah. Ka'amar L'Acha Shagamar Kohen Gadol Matan Dam Mishapar V'Soyer Kedesal Perkin Doitziloi. Now the Kohen Gadol concluded the Matan Dam and Par V'Soyer. Bolei HaKohen Eitel Soyer Mishtalech. Now he approaches the Soyer Azazel. B'Makim Shemidei Sham Keneged Ve'Shiluchoi Kedamoran Peritarf B'Kalfi. He goes to the Soyer, finds him where he placed him. He positioned him last time after the Hagrola. As we discussed earlier in the Daf Aleph, he wrapped a red ribbon around between his horn, and he positioned him Keneged Ve'Shiluchoi, facing the exit route of the out of the Azora. So he goes back there and he does the Vida. The Mishnah says anybody can take the animal, but there was a set practice. Interesting. Rashi learns the word kayhanim here seems to have a double meaning. That she'asu, that the kayhanim in the Beis Hamikdash established a practice that the kayhanim will kva, that the kayhanim were the ones generally transporting the yisrael. And the bezin of kayhanim who were in charge there wouldn't allow the Yisrael to transport the yisrael. In fact, one time it happened that it was an Arsla, that was his name, he was a Yisrael. The kevish came in mal asaloi, some sort of ram, shukavaya v'yotzei derech oisei kevish. Chutz la'azora, chutz la'ir, kadei shelo yuchlu ha'bavlim ligav mishulach. So the bavlim couldn't harm him, couldn't grab onto him and harass him. They would grab his hair, toil my hair, but say, Val Tasha, why are you lingering around? You are the animal with the Averis. Get going. Let's go back to the Gemara. So if you take a look at the Lashon of the Vidui, he would ask Hashem for Mechila on behalf of Klal Yisrael. Says the Gemara, V'ilu b'nei Aaron am kadeshech le'kamar. He wouldn't make any mention. He wouldn't include the b'nei Aaron am kadeshech, the holy nation, in the Vidui. Apparently, they're not included in this Vidui. Mantana, whose Shita is reflected in our Mishnah. Amar Yirmiyah like Rabbi Yehuda. Apparently not like Rabbi Yehuda. The Rabbi Yehuda, because he holds that even the Kayhanim were ultimately included in the Vidui of Yisrael Mishtaleach. Ha'amar, we learned this earlier in the back on the Samach Aleph. Ha'amar yesh lem kapara b'Yisrael Mishtaleach. Although the Kayhanim have their own personal carbon, the par, and the Vidui on that par is meant to address their Averis. But as Rabbi Yehuda explained to us earlier, that's only directed at the Tumas Migdash or Kadosha, any Averis related to being Metamed the Migdash. But when it comes to the rest of the Averis, just as Yisrael get their kapara from Sorah Mishtaleach, likewise Kayhanim. Our Mishnah doesn't seem to hold that way. Abai Armano, Afilu Tem Rabbi Yehuda. This Mishnah could even be following Rabbi Yehuda. They're also included in this video. Atu Kayhanim. Are you going to say that the Kayhanim La B'chlal Amcha Yisrael Ninu? Are not part of Amcha Yisrael? Of course they are. And they're included in this video as well. Mitzari L'mishu Melichu. Tanu Rabbanon. Pasuk says, the Kohen Gadol is meant to take the Soira Mishtaleach, V'shilach, and send it off, B'yad Ish Iti. Iti is lashon of time, selected in advance. Ayin Taf Yud. Iti Hamidbar. Says the Brisa, Ish Lahachshir Sazar. To allow anybody, Kohen, Levi, Yisrael, to do this job. The word Iti is coming to tell you Shehei Mezuman. He's meant to be pre-selected from before Yom Kippur for this job. We learn from the word Iti as well, Vafilu b'Shabbos. Pasuk doesn't say Mezuman, it says Iti Lashnav. Be'itai b'mei'adai, in its time, regardless of whether it's Shabbos. You go ahead and fulfill this, complete this process. Iti, we learn Vafilu b'Tumah, even at the expense of Tumah. Let's go with a Rashi on top. Shehei Mezuman, Muchan Lekach Me'etmoil, we have an individual who has been pre-selected for this task. Iti Vafilu b'Shabbos. Iti is Be'itoi b'mei'adai Yishtaleach V'lo Yaver. You're not meant to ignore this task. You're meant to do it Vafilu b'Shabbos or b'Tumah. Says Rashi, look, come on, Mefarish. Soon the Gemara will explain. What's the point of Imatir on Shabbos and on Tumah? My Yisra Shabbos v'Tumah Shayach b'Shiluchai. What conceivable concern, Shabbos or Tumah concern, can apply regarding sending off this Soyer? It's not a Malacha. The Yitzchak l'Rabuyah, that we should need a Ribuy to allow the Shabbos or Tumah. More soon we'll get into this. Let's go back to the Gemara on the second line. So the Brisa was Doirish the Pasuk. Began with the word Ish. Ish lahachshir hazar. Ish is allowing us to use even a zar, a non-kohen, for this task. Pshita, of course. It's not an avoida. Why would I think a zor is not kosher? I would think perhaps, since we have a lashon kapara related to the sur mishtaleach, it's regarded as some kapara procedure, and you cannot use a Yisrael. That requires a kohen kamash malon. The pasuk by using the word ish indicates even a Yisrael is fine. From the word iti we learn bafilu b'Shabbos. You do this even on Shabbos. Why would I think otherwise? What's the point of telling me do it even on Shabbos? Let's go back to Rashi on the fourth line. Says Rashi, Ma chilul Shabbos yesh. What theoretical chilul Shabbos can be involved here? Which would require a heter. Says Rashi, perhaps because of tchumen. You're transporting him far away from Yerushalayim, past the 2,000 amma limit. Imisham tchumen. Well, you don't need a pasuk to be matter that. The rabbanon ba'amaninu. That's only an issa the rabbanon shegazru alein lachamatan Torah. It wouldn't make sense that the pasuk is being matir an issa which was only introduced by the rabbanon. Continues the Gemara. You know why we need a heter for Shabbos? Amar Rav Sheshes. Loimar she'ima yechayla. The pasuk is telling you, suppose the goat was sickly, he fell ill, he has a hard time walking. Markivay al ksefay. This Yisrael, or this kohen who's transporting him, is allowed to carry him on his shoulders out to the midbar. Now there's a kasha here. If the animal is a choyla, then he's balmum, so he's puzzled. Why would he be an eligible candidate for the Ser Azazel job? So Mepharshim say he's somewhere in between. He's not ill to the point that he's considered a balmum. He's not quivering, but he's too weak to take this long walk, a pretty far trip out to the midbar. So he needs some help. And the pasuk is telling you, do this even on Shabbos, i.e., carry him even on your shoulders, even though you're doing a malacha of hoitzah. You're carrying him from the Beis Hamikdash, which is the Yachad, out to the street. Says Mar Kiman to like Rabbi Nosson. Apparently, this brisa is not following Rabbi Nosson's shita, who would hold that there's never concern of hoitzah when transporting animals. The Rabbi Nosson, because according to him, Ha'amar, doesn't he tell us in Masechah Shabbos, Chai noiseis atzmai, a living being, even an animal, slightly carries himself. He lifts himself. He makes himself lighter. We know that live weight is a bit lighter than dead weight. In which case, Rabbi Nosson says, Minat Torah, it's not a malacha because it's dissimilar to the typical load, the loads which were carried in the Mishkan, which were simply dead weight objects. A live animal, a live person is not really considered a masri as per the malachas in the Mishkan. And therefore there's no Isser Melachim in Torah. So why would the Brisa present the pasuk in this manner? That pasuk is allowing you to transport the animal even on Shabbos, despite the fact that it's a potential malacha, it's haitzah. It wouldn't be a malacha regardless. Chanay says atzma. Afilu tem Rabbi Nosson, says the Gemara. No, we could be following even Rabbi Nosson, who holds that generally carrying a live animal is not a vav malacha de'oraisa, but choloshani. Keep in mind, we're speaking about an ill goat. An ill goat is pretty much dead weight. And Rabbi Nosson agrees that if we're speaking in such a case, such as a person who's ill, or as the Gemara Shabbos speaks about, one who's tied up, he doesn't have that ability to lighten the load, and it's considered like any other object, in which case it involves a malacha of haitzah. Here as well, we need a pasuk to tell you that in this case, when the goat is chala, you may carry him even on Shabbos, despite the fact that he's doing a malacha. Amar Rafram Zoisei Meres, we can conclude from this discussion that Eruv v'hoitzah l'Shabbos vein Eruv v'hoitzah l'Yom Kippur. And although there is a malacha of hoitzah, you may not carry from one rishus to the other. And likewise is the din of Eruv, which as a din to Rabbanon. As a result of that, Isser hoitzah min Torah, right? Chum will concern that just as you might not carry, you're not allowed to carry into the street. Therefore, they said, well, don't carry from one house to the other without an erev. We're going to see in Rashi. In any case, this halacha applies to Shabbos and not to Yom Kippur. Why? How do we prove this? Very pashut. Torah is telling you you're allowed to carry the animal even though it's Shabbos. Forget about Shabbos. What did he do on Yom Kippur that fell out on a Tuesday? We don't seem to have a concern about that. Apparently, that would never be a concern because on Yom Kippur there is no Isser Haitzah. So the concern is only if it falls out on Shabbos. Now the Torah needs to tell you, don't be concerned about Haitzah on account of the Shabbos element of today. Itiv afilu b'Shabbos. So this proves to us that Erev and Haitzah only applies to Shabbos and not to Yom Kippur. Let's go over to Rashi, about 3-4 lines up. Zois Oymera, says Rashi, lemisni itiv afilu b'Shabbos. The fact that we need that drasha to allow carrying on Shabbos, which implies that it's not generally a concern when it's only Yom Kippur. Ika lemishma, we can derive from here, de'ein iser haitzah Yom Kippurim. Iser haitzah doesn't apply to Yom Kippur. And the Farshim explained, although you're not meant to do malacha on Yom Kippur, but keep in mind that haitzah is not really considered like all the other lamatas malachas. In fact, the Gemara Shabbos calls it a malacha gruahi. It's a deficient malacha. He's not really creating something, not fashioning something. He's just changing the rishur, changing the location, and we need special psukim for that. Special psukim which teach us that haitzah is a malacha on Shabbos, but as the Gemara says here, it doesn't apply to Yom Kippur. Because otherwise, if Yom Kippur will be equated to Shabbos with respect to haitzah, why in the world would you need a pasuk to be mata carrying on Shabbos, which falls out Yom Kippur? Even your typical ordinary Yom Kippur, which falls out on a Tuesday, has the same concern. Torah says, send them out. Under all circumstances, even if you have to carry him. So the right from here that the halach of Erev and Haitzah doesn't apply to Yom Kippur, only to Shabbos. As Rashi, the word Erev is really just an add-on. Erev Kedi Nasbo, just an add-on. El Dahaba Hatalia. It's only the Rabbanan, and we're discussing Psukim here. So it's not really a part of the equation. But the reason why the Gemara puts them together, because really they're interdependent. The basis for Erev Chatzeris was a concern of Haitzah. Shegazru, they were guys are not to carry lataltal mishus l'rishus from one home to the other, even if they're both rishus hayachids, one neighbor to the other. Gezerah mishum Haitzah mishus yachid rishus rabim, because it might lead to carry from rishus yachid rishus rabim. So the din of Haitzah and Atayra, the din of Erev Chatzeris and Rabban are really synonymous. They go hand in hand. And if the Gemara concludes, we can prove that in Yom Kippur there's no Isser Haitzah, and likewise no Isser Erev Rabbanon, as opposed to Shabbos, which has both Isser. It's interesting that there's another Gersa, Erev Haitzah l'Shabbos, without the Vav of the Haitzah, which would pretty much answer Rashi's Kasha. Why would the Gemara make mention of Erev the Rabbanon, which doesn't really fit into the discussion of the Psum, when we're talking about Psukim of Torah. So Erev Haitzah means that we mix Haitzah in to the other malachas. Erev Haitzah l'Shabbos, that we mix Haitzah and we put it into the list of the other malachas when it comes to Shabbos. It is a malacha, as opposed to Yom Kippur. Ve'ein Erev Haitzah Yom Kippurim, we don't mix Haitzah into the other malachas when it comes to Yom Kippur, meaning Haitzah is not deemed a malacha when it comes to Yom Kippur. Continues the Gemara. Let's learn the Brisa further. Iti teaches us va'afilu b'tumah. Even if this fellow is tamei, he proceeds with the sar la'azazel. L'may hilchasa. Again, what's the point? What would be an afkamina if he's tamei? He's not doing avoida. He's not even entering the Beis Hamikdash. The Gemara figures at this point. So what's the point of being marba, allowing him to do it when he's tamei? Amar Rav Sheshes loymar. It's coming to tell you. This fellow accompanying the Sar La'azazel becomes tamei. Nichnas tamei la'azara u'mishalchay. He may enter the azara when he is betumah. To allow the Kohen Gadol. It's interesting. The Kohen Gadol would transfer the Sar La'azazel to this fellow, who would hand it over to him. And that's why he needs to be in the Azara. Farshim point out from the Mashmois of the Psukim that everything took place in the Azara. Kagala went from one thing to the next, over to the Mishaleach Shar L'Azazel, all happened in the Azara. He handed it over to this fellow, so you have to go back into the Azara for that. That's the Chiddush. Even if the Mishaleach is Tomei, he goes into the Azara to greet the Kohen Gadol, to receive the reins of this goat, even though he's Betumah. That's part and parcel of the process here. The Shiloh begins in the Beis HaMikdash. Continues the Gemara. Shalu es Rabbi Eliezer. The Talmidim asked Rabbi Eliezer several interesting shilas, and we find an interesting phenomenon here. He wouldn't respond directly. He sort of dodged the question. And Rashi explains that it wasn't as though he didn't know the answer. He was avoiding the topic because he had a long-standing practice. He was very particular about the Masorah. He wouldn't relay anything which he hadn't heard clearly from his Rebbeim. So whenever it involved something which he hadn't heard, he would just avoid the topic. That explains the next Gemara. Shalu es Rabbi Eliezer. They asked Rabbi Eliezer the following shaila. Chala. Suppose the goat fell ill and needs to be carried out. What do? Mau shiar kiveyu al kseifa. Can we load up the goat on this fellow's shoulder and have him carry the goat out in this manner? Amar lam, he responded, what are you concerned about this yochel? This goat is strong and healthy. This is never a concern. In fact, yochel hu laharkiv. Aniva atem. This goat can in fact carry me and you on his shoulder. It's never a shaila of carrying the goat. He'll carry us. It was just a way of avoiding the topic. Next question they asked him. Chala mishalchay. Suppose the individual who was selected to transport the sword out to the midbar, he himself fell ill. He's unavailable. Can we send the goat using somebody else? Amar lahem. So he responded once again. He avoided the shaila. Ehei b'shalem ani v'atem. Why would you have this concern? It doesn't concern me. It doesn't concern you. They would never pick us as replacements. So what are you worried about such a shaila? Next question. D'chafay v'loy meitz. Suppose he threw him down the cliff, and it turns out that the goat's still alive. Ma'oshir akrav yimisenu is meant to follow the goat down and kill it. Amalam, he responded, this is never a concern. He's certainly dead on his way down. It happens so efficiently, so quickly. In fact, the same way the goat will die on its way down, all Hashem's enemies should be destroyed in this efficient manner. So he avoided the topic. He didn't respond directly to any one of those three shilas. The one wants to know, Lamaisa, what do? These are true, good shilas. As follows. Chala, if the goat falls ill, Markiv al Kseifa, of course he carries him on his shoulders, transports him out to the midbar, as we learned earlier. Likewise, Chala mishalchet. Suppose the person accompanying the goat falls ill and is unavailable, just get a substitute to do the job. Although lechatchila, he's meant to be pre-designated from before Yom Kippur, but for lack of other alternative, we use a replacement. Interesting shaila. Why when it comes to chala do we say use somebody else? But when it comes to nitma, we say no, you go back in there even though you're tummy. So the Farshim say we're speaking about the carbon tzibur, tumah hutra b'tzibur, the chuya b'tzibur, which case tumah is treated more leniently than other things. And the Torah says go in despite your tummy, despite the fact that he's tummy, because we're meant to use the pre-designated fellow. But if it's not practical, he's chala, he's physically unable, of course, we use somebody else in his stead. And finally, the chafiv v'lei meis. What happens if he throws him off the cliff and he sees that he was not meis? He needs to follow him down and make sure that he's meis. Continues the Gemara. Shalos Rabbi Eliezer. Once again, they asked Rabbi Eliezer the following shilas. Ploini ma'u l'olam haba. What is this in this fellow's status when it comes to olam haba? Does he have a portion in the world to come or not? Amar Lamsi responded, Lo shal tuni elal pleni. He probably only meant to ask me about somebody else. So again, he avoided this shaila. Now Rashi actually learns there was a deeper meaning here. Their question was, Shloimeh HaMelech, Shloimeh ben David, a ben olam haba. There's a whole discussion in the Gemara and Shabbos about this. The Gemara says, Whoever thinks Shlomo HaMelech was choyte, it's a grave mistake. Although the Psukim speak about Noshav Hitus Levavai, many wives that he had diverted his heart, but he still remains steadfast in his madrega. Of course, he has a Chelka Im Haba. So the question was regarding Shlomo HaMelech's Chelka Im Haba, and he responded, Shem Lo Yishal Tuni Al Pliny. Perhaps you're referring to somebody else, and Rashi says it's referring to Avshalom. That's probably one you wanted to know. And Taisus explains Avshalom was Baal Pil actually Aviv, and the Shaila is whether they're considered really the wives of David HaMelech or not. So that was a Shaila whether he lost his Chelka Im Haba, whether he committed these grave sins or not. So that was a Shaila that he referred back, and of course he didn't give a clear response. Next question. Ma'ula Hatzel Roya Kivsa Min Ari. Can a Roya, can a shepherd, salvage the sheep from the lion's mouth? Some explain there's a Shaila whether you can take away the parnasa of the lion. Look, Hashem gave him a sheep. Is it proper to pull away the sheep from the lion? Amar Lams, he responded, once again he dodged the question, Lo Yishal Tuni Ella Elaha Kivsa. So the Bach has a girsa Lo Yishal Tuni Ella Roya. He probably meant to ask me regarding saving the shepherd from the lion. So, okay, so they responded in kind. They rephrased the question. Ma'ula Hasel, Haroy Menari. Okay, what is the halacha regarding saving the shepherd from the lion? Amar once again, he diverted and he said, Lo Yishal Tuni Ella Al HaKifsa. Perhaps you meant to ask me regarding saving the sheep from the lion. So what was the deeper meaning behind this question? Taisus has a mahalach here. He says, the shaila was regarding saving the kivsa, the sheep, which was Bathsheba, from the Ari, the lion, which is David HaMelech, equated to a lion from Shevet Yehuda. And the question was whether Bathsheba was Asr to David, or Mutter to David, because she already had a get from her husband Uriah. So this is a historical question. What is the proper perspective regarding that story with David and Bathsheba? Was she Asr to him, was she Mutter to him? And the response of Ma'ula Hatzel Haroy Med Hari, can we save the shepherd from the lion? The Roy is referring to Uriah Hachiti, her husband, her former husband. And the Gemara speaks in Shabbos about the fact that he expressed himself with somewhat disrespect towards David HaMelech, and the question is whether he's considered a rebeller, a Merid B'Malchus. And that was a shaila here. Is it really considered a Merid B'Malchus? Do we consider what he said to be disrespectful and he's Merid B'Malchus, or not? So that's a shaila. The Roya, Uriah, the shepherd, is he meant to be saved from the Ari, meaning was David HaMelech justified in bringing about a punishment to Uriah or not? So this was a historical shaila, and again, it was back and forth in this cryptic way, and he refused to relate to it clearly because it's something which he hadn't heard from his Rebbe. He didn't want to relate to it. Furthermore, they asked him, Mamzer Maulirash, is a Mamzer eligible to be Yerush, his father? He responded to them, Mauli Yabim. He probably wanted to know whether he has the ability to be Miyabim, Eshes Achev, the wife of his deceased brother. So again, he avoided the shaila, and of course, by the way, both are included in the Mishnah Yivamis. Certainly, a Mamzer is considered a child, he's Yerush, his father, and likewise, he's Miyabim Eshes Achev. Furthermore, they asked him, Ma'u Loset es Beisar. May one plaster his home, Bismanazeh, or perhaps he must refrain to experience the tsar of the Churban. He responded, again, cryptically, Ma'u Loset es Kivra. Perhaps this is really what you wanted to know. Can you plaster the caver? So I saw a nice shot in the Ein Abdullah. He says it was a piece of musar. Plastering a home. That's a short term. A person should be concerned about what he's going to take along into the caver. That's the long term dwelling of a person. What are you worried about plastering the home? Lost it as kivroi. You should be preoccupied with that. You know, famous Anshel Rothschild used to have a daily routine where he would enter his caver with tachrichem to have a little bit of a feeling and experience of what's really important in life. Chavetz Chaim, they say, used to go up to the attic and demonstrate the experience of Beden Shamala. Yisrael Meir, what did you do in your life? And he would respond. It would be a whole to-do back and forth to really, really experience what things are about and what's important, to keep things in perspective. Ma'al Osades Kivra. Explains the Gemara, what's going on? Why would he avoid answering directly? Hifligen is a lashon of at a distance. He wasn't trying to distance himself from their question. It wasn't that he didn't know their answer. But he had this established minhag. He would not relate to something which he didn't have a clear tradition about. Continues the Gemara with another story regarding Rabbi Lezer. Shala Isha Chachama as Rabbi Lezer. An Isha Chachama approached Rabbi Lezer. She wanted to know what's going on by the Egel. Me'achar Shemasa Egel Shavin. Since anything that was done by the Egel, all forms of worship of the Egel were avodah zarah. If that's the case, why is it that we find different levels of einish? Some were hit by sword, some died through the Magefa, the plague, some were affected by hadroikin, some sort of inner illness. Why do we find differences in the einish if all the perpetrators were equally guilty? Amala, so once again he avoided the topic. He says, Ein chachma leisha el bepelach. An isha chachama is meant to apply her wisdom to the pelach, to the spinning machine. So pelach was a tool used to spin thread, which was their occupation. He says, go ahead and apply your chachma there. V'cheinu omer, as the pasuk says, v'chol isha chachmas lei b'yadei atavu. Hashem endows an isha with talent, with chachma. What does she do with it? B'yadei atavu. They spun the threads to donate nicely to the Mishkan. The women's domain is in the practical field. Hashem gives you talent and chachma. You're meant to go ahead and apply it in the practical world to beautify your mitzvahs, to raise your children. The intellectual, abstract world of these types of discussions, that's man's world. In fact, the Yerushalmi explains further that he didn't want to be moiser de retur l'nashim. That the Rambam says that for the most part, nashim are not meant to be engaged in Torah Shabbat Peh. There's always a concern that they might misapply, misuse the knowledge. It's not their expertise. And therefore he refrained from engaging her in intellectual conversation. Go ahead and apply your tremendous wisdom, your talents, to practical things, which is your role, your task in this world. Okay, but we have a shaila on our hands. Why? Why is it so that we find different levels of einish by the Egel? So we have a discussion, Itmar and Machlokes between Rav and Levi. Two ways to explain. Chadam, one explained, all depended on the severity of the Avera. To what extent he did avodah zarah. Siveach v'kiter, he was makar v'karban, the tzvicha, shchita v'kiter aktora, to the Egel b'sayif. Then he was hit really hard. He got the einish misa sword. Gifei finichek, if he only hugged and kissed the avodah zarah b'misa, then he was maced through the magefa, through the plague. Samach b'levavai, if he didn't actually engage practically, it was just that he was glad in his heart, he engaged emotionally, b'hadroikan, so he suffered through the hadroikan, which was some sort of interior illness. V'chadam, the other one explained, it depends on the circumstance, once again. Eidim v'asra, if there were witnesses and they warned him not to do avodah zarah b'sayif, then he was judged b'sayif, he was taken to Bezdin, given misa. Eidim b'le'asra, if there were witnesses but there was no warning, b'misa, then the magefa caught up to him. Lo eidim b'le'asra, if there was no eidim and asra b'adroiken, he died through adroiken, and of course the kasha here is, well, both these, misa and hadroiken, are misa b'dei shemayim. So what difference does it make if there was eidim with asra, if there were eidim beloy asra, and that's the magefa, or loy eidim beloy asra, in which case you can only be affected by that droikan. In either case, it was misa through b'dei shamayim. So why this difference? So the Siach Yitzchak says because doing the Avera with Edom, even though it was not strong, they couldn't bring it to Bezdin, but it was more of a publicly done Avera with Farhesia, with Edom, and he disregarded the Edom who were watching him. It was more of a publicly committed sin, and therefore he deserved a greater einish, which was the Misa of the Magefa, which seems to be more severe than the Hadrega. Amar Yehuda, Shifter Shalevi Lo Yavad Avodas Kechavim. The entire Shevet Levi were free, were innocent from Avodas Kechavim of the Egel. Shenema Vayamad Moshe V'Shar Machna. Moshe positioned himself at the Shar Machna, and he announced, Mila Hashem Elai. Who is Hashem's legion? Come join me in meeting out punishment to the Oivri Avera and everybody. Vayasfu Elav Kol Bnei Levi. Apparently, all of Levi were innocent. Yosef Ravina. Ravina was sitting and saying over this thing that all Bnei Levi were free from Avera. Eisvei Bnei Rav Papa Bar Abba Ravina. The sons of Rav Papa asked him a shayla. Moshe Rabbeinu, when praising Bnei Levi later on in the Chumash, says Ha'omer la'avev le'imay le'reisiv, that the fellow of Shevet Levi was so bent on doing the Ratzon Hashem, on exacting punishment on those who did the Avera, they were willing to even ignore their own family. Ha'omer la'avev le'imay le'reisiv. I didn't see you, father and mother. Totally ignore the fact that these are his parents. And if they were deserving of punishment, the Levi fellow would go ahead and exact punishment on them. Apparently, even members of Shevet Levi were involved. Answers the Gemara, no, they weren't of Shevet Levi. Aviv was speaking about Avi Imam Yisrael, his grandfather, his mother's father, who was Yisrael. Or Imam means mother's mother. Again, not Levi, rather she was of a different Shevet. Achiv here could mean Achiv mi'imai, mi-Yisrael, his half-brother, from his mother's side, who was a Yisrael, not a Levi. And Banav means Bnei Bita mi-Yisrael, Bnei Bita. It could be sons of his daughter, who once again were no longer Shevet Levi, and therefore they were not considered, they were Yisrael, and therefore they were deserving of punishment because they were involved in the Egel. Continues Zumar V'kevesh Asaloi. Mishnah tells us they made this ramp, so that the fellow can get out in a hurry and avoid this violent encounter with the Bavlim who would pull his hair. Amar Rabba Babrachana, Loi Bavlim Hayu. Actually, these fellows were not from Bavel. The hair pullers were not Babylonians. Alexandrium Hayu. They were from Alexandria, from Egypt. That's where these coarse people came from. So why were they referred to as Bavlim? Umetechshes Einim. Because the Bnei Yisrael had this long-standing animosity with the Babylonians. We learned this back in the with Rish Lakish and Rabbi Rachana. They were upset at the Babylonians for not coming up with Ezra by Yesheni and bringing about a lessening, causing a lessening of the Hashras Hashchinim by Yesheni. So they had this long-standing sinner between the Bnei Yisrael and the Bavel, and because of that, anybody who acted inappropriately would be labeled by the Bnei Yisrael as a Babylonian. So these are actually people from Alexandria, but they were called Babylonians because that was just a derogatory term used by the Bnei Yisrael to denote inappropriate behavior. Tani Namihachu, we have a brayso which supports this. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Loi Bavlim Hayu. They weren't from Bavel. El Alexandrium Hayu. Amar Rabbi Yossi. So Rabbi Yossi's family came from Bavel. So Rabbi Yossi, when he heard that it was not in reference to Bnei Bavel, it was actually the Alexandrian which were called Bavliim. So now he was at ease. Amar Rabbi Yossi responded to Rabbi Yehuda, Tanuch Daitcha. Your mind should be at ease. Hashem should be Maniach Daitcha. She'nachta Daiti, because you put my mind at ease, and it wasn't the Bnei Bavel which are being put down, it was actually the Alexandrian. So what would they tell him? Tail would say, quickly grab the animal and go. Tana, we learned to the Brisa, which elaborates further. They tell him, get out. Ma shoi sfirodain. This sphere, this goat, what's it doing here? What's it lingering around? The chayvei dara sagin. Don't you know the chayvei dara, the Averis of the generation are Sagian, are many, and the Sir is holding on to the Averis. What's going on? Get going. Get rid of the Averis. Take it out to the Midbar. Okay, time for Riv Chazara. We discussed the concept of Takala. We don't want to leave an animal over for next year because it might be misused throughout the year. We learned about the video in the Ser Mishtaleach, in which case he would mention Hashem's name 3 times, at the end of which the Kohanim and would bow down and say Baruch Shem. A Yisrael can do the job, but generally speaking, was a Kohen. He's meant to be selected from yesterday. He can do it even Betuma, and even if you have to carry the animal on Shabbos. We learned about several back and forth between Rav Lezer and his Talmidim, who was careful not to relate anything which he didn't know but Mesorah, and we concluded with Shevet Levi, who were completely free of avodah zarah by the Egel, and the ramp, which was constructed to make that buffer zone between the Mishaleach and the Alexandrium, who would pull his hair. Toil would say, eager to get rid of their affairs. Hatzlacha Rabbi.